Well, we're fresh off last week's Culturati Summit, which was our 10th anniversary gathering at campus on Lake Austin. It was a powerful few days of insight, vulnerability, and vision where leaders from across industries came together to explore what it takes to build purpose, agency, and trust inside their organizations. One of the people who helped set the tone from the stage alongside our very own Reverend Stephen Tomlinson was Vaishali Jadhav, who is one of our speakers today and one of our MCs, who is known for her signature warmth, wit, and wisdom. Today, we're continuing that spirit in this Culturati Live by focusing inward on our core values as leaders, the strengths that guide us, and the shadow side we don't always see. Because when overused or misapplied, even our best intentions can become blind spots. Joining Vaishali is Ashley Terry, the Director of Talent Management at Kendra Scott, which I'm representing today, where she leads programs that drive growth, connection, and culture across the business. With over 15 years in talent and people operations, she's built a reputation for helping leaders show up with intention and humanity. And Vaishali, who we all know and love, is the founder of Mandalight Learning, a full circle leadership and team development company. She brings 25 years, which I find hard to believe looking at her, of experience from organizations like Whole Foods, Gallup, and Indeed. And she's also a LinkedIn top voice in training and a faculty member at the Kendra Scott Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership Institute. So, as mentioned, I'm wearing my favorite Kendra Scott earrings today, and it just feels especially right to have these two powerhouse women leading us. Let's dive in.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that beautiful welcome, Misty. I just feel at home here and I'm so grateful to be here. As Misty said, I am celebrating 25 years in working in leadership development. I started when I was 5, so that totally makes sense. But I am really proud to bring an experience that was framed from my time at the Gallup organization, later at Whole Foods Market, and Indeed. This is an exercise I've also used with some of my friends I see joining us at Procore Technologies. And it's a foundation of the program that we also bring to students at the Kendra Scott Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership Institute today with one of my favorite strategic partners. We are on year 3 working together on the leadership programming for Kendra Scott, now the company. And so while I am Vaishali, I will give it to Ashley to introduce herself and kind of kick off our program.
Oh, thank you so much, Vaishali. I'm excited to be here with you today. I'm Ashley Terry. As they have said, I lead talent management and development at Kendra Scott. We are a fashion lifestyle brand based in Austin. And our team internally works across the business. Our job is to enable our people, our teams, our leaders to perform at their highest levels, right? Grow the business, grow their own careers. But what is most fitting for our conversation today and for everyone in this group is, the expectation is also that they are really championing and building our unique culture along the way, which is a very important part of that, something that we value very deeply and is going to be relevant for our conversation today.
Excellent. I'm so excited. I see some Californians, Susan from New Mexico, welcome. We are so proud of the impact that Kendra Scott has made, not only as a billion-dollar company, women-owned, but of the philanthropy that she brings to our community and to several communities throughout the country. So with that, I'd love you to set the stage and talk about the role this values exercise has played in the leadership development program.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there was a comment in the chat about the sound being muffled. So I will do my best. And if it's not getting better, please do let us know.
Thank you.
So, like I said, really looking forward to our conversation today. Vaishali, you and I have been working together. We bring values to our emerging leader program internally, right? So part of enabling the business and enabling performance, one of the most important things that we do to drive that is to develop our leaders. And we have an emerging leader, up and coming leaders, growing leaders within the organization, a very specific program where we are working on development and the essential skills that you need to be effective, but most importantly for us at Kendra Scott, to lead with heart and to be human centric. And so we kick off that program asking our leaders to identify their personal values. It's the core of the program, but it's also the thing that we have found really resonates the most. It's the thing that they come back to over and over again. It's the thing that they take back to their teams the most, the things that they keep talking about. And then when other people hear about it, they want to talk about it. They want us to come and do the values exercise with them. So it's really been very successful for us.
Excellent. I love that. I love it just in our conversations talking about just all types of business units, whether it's a sub team in tech or our HR teams and marketing teams and all the variety of different teams, even perhaps store leadership, kind of unifying around this around this one exercise.
Yeah, it's the thing that we all have in common, right? Regardless of your role, regardless of your area of expertise or the stuff that you do for the organization, it's the thing that we all have in common is our values. And I know you and I have talked about a lot about this in an age where AI is up and coming and it seems to kind of be embedded everywhere. And we're all asking ourselves these questions of how is that going to upend work and change culture at work. It's the thing that reminds us that we're all human, which is the thing that, that makes us different from AI and that AI is not going to replace.
Yet. Who knows?
Yeah.
Excellent. So with that, I'll kick this off, which what we wanted to do, and I've been with the Culturati community for I think about 7 years now. And what I know and sitting in the audience and talking to attendees and definitely talking to the planning team is the audience loves an applicable exercise, whether it's a great question they can ask or a tool they can use right away or just a shift that they can make immediately. And that is exactly what we want you to do today. When do you have an hour just to think about how things are going for you? Just check in around what's filled with friction, what's feeling more at ease right now. So we want to give that gift to you and additionally make sure you have an exercise you can bring right away to your team. And so we'd love to take you on that journey. And towards the end, we'll have time for questions. If you want to bring this exercise back to your teams or leaders, Ashley and I are happy to give you a variety of ideas. As I mentioned, this exercise has evolved differently from all the different companies that I've worked with, but simply put, the through line of all the companies that I've worked with is that they've all been mission driven and have a very specific standard around core values. So they all have a specific way that they are showing up in their industry, to their communities, and to their customers. If you think about Whole Foods, Indeed, Procore Technologies while I was there, Gallup organization, all have very strong core values. But my ask is, when we work for these values-driven companies, do we take space as individuals to think about our own core values? I don't know how we steward the values of a company if we haven't really gotten clear with our own values. And so this is the conversation that we'd love to start with today. At its core, I would love for you to think about what we mean by core values. And I'd love for you to place those observations in the chat. So I gave you the first answer. So typically, especially when we think about company level values, they tend to be an articulation of what you will do. But what else? What else does the role of core values play for a company or for an individual? Provide some of those answers in the chat. What I'll also do here is, although they offer articulation of what you will do, they also articulate what you won't do. And so when I think about values, for example, Whole Foods was the first company I worked for with a very specific set of values around quality standards. So it means this is why we sell these certain products, but hey, customer, we're going to be super transparent that given our values, it means we also don't sell these certain kinds of products. So with that, if you're feeling chatty, we'd love to see in the chat what else the role of values play for you. Guide you in decisions. Hi, Samantha. You could be facilitating this with me. Yes, they guide you in decisions. Absolutely. When we think about values, it's when you've made key decisions in your life, there was something inherently guiding you. Let's make that more explicit. And I bet your understanding your values helps to understand that. Yes, how you will do it, how you will navigate this. See, Samantha. You were next on my slide. Help you make decisions, provide team members with a level of autonomy and trust internally. Yes. Oh, yes. company level core values absolutely help team members understand what does empowerment look like within this values driven company, and how is trust built internally given core values. So at their core, values are the articulation of what you'll do. They help you make decisions, and they serve as that filter through which you assess situations. So I gave a quick example about how the values around quality standard helped serve as that filter through which Whole Foods Market makes decisions. Well, that doesn't end at the individual level. You all have a filter through which you assess information. And I invite you to think about the role that values play with that filter. I'll give you the quickest of examples to help priming you. So when we share our values down the road, you're also equipped like Misty with this beautiful list of 5 values. So I remember one time being interrupted. This is when I was at Whole Foods. I'm not proud of this story, but I will share it. That I was at Whole Foods, and I was early on in my career there. And I was sharing a story about how we should address leadership development. And y'all, I was so proud of this story. I was just sharing it with my team. And all of a sudden, in the middle of this beautiful idea, somebody interrupted me. And I could just feel a shut down. I feel the back of my neck getting warm. And again, not proud of this, but I had shut down in the meeting. I was saying something important. I was interrupted and I didn't proceed. Again, not proud of this, but you cannot shift what you are not aware of. Later on in that exact same meeting, my boss was sharing an idea. She got interrupted and she got excited about the interruption and she lit up and expanded on that person's contribution and kind of used it to refine her idea. Right? The exact same thing happened to us. It shut me down and it lit her up. And it's probably fair to say there was that values perspective through which we assessed that behavior that then led to our response. So for leaders, perhaps this could be a tool that helps you understand reactions and get ahead of where people might feel stressed and really create an environment of empathy. Values come from a variety of places. They come from our upbringing, our life experiences, any kind of spiritual influences, cultural norms. And it's fair to say, since all of us have had different upbringing, life experiences, spiritual influences, it's fair to say we all might also have a different set of value system. We'll learn here too, it could be the case that maybe Ashley and I have a few shared values, but they could even look different compared to where they came from. And I'm looking at Misty's. I think Misty and I have one that definitely overlaps here. And so, right, but that doesn't mean that I know all of Misty's values and I know everything about her. What I say about a strong values exercise is now I can have it does not replace a conversation I should have with Misty. It helps me have a better one. I know where to get curious. I know where to ask for more detail, and I can use that to make sure that I am stewarding Misty, if I were her leader, in a way that really resonates with her and is aligned with her values. So with that, I'm going to quickly talk about my values. Again, I would love for you to come out of this with a kind of a draft of your values. I see like Samantha and KJ, some of Anahita too. I know you've done a lot of values work, so maybe you're refining your values as you're going through this session. But I will just kind of quickly talk about mine, and we'll have Ashley talk about hers to kind of prime you and get you thinking about yours. Impact is top of the list. And I've had some bosses on the chat in the session here, and they can probably attest. When they know, they coach me around the impact that my work will make, they know they're going to get an unstoppable Vaishali. If I know the training session is going to be of help, the analysis you're asking me to do, you're going to get a Vaishali that is probably going to exceed expectations, meet or exceed the deadline, and give you more than you asked for, because you were asking me for something that's aligned with one of my values. If I don't perceive the work I'm going to do is going to make an impact, then you're going to get a grumpy Vaishali. You're going to get a Vaishali. I'm a professional, so I'll still turn it in. I may give you exactly what you want, versus putting 120% of myself into it, because I want to because the experience is misaligned with my values. So it's going to impact my energy. Joy is on here. I loved my time at Whole Foods. It was the first time I had we worked so hard. But I loved what I was doing, and that combination of joy, working hard, and doing it with people that I truly loved, knew that helped me understand that I could have experienced joy at work. Humor is on here. I like to say I take my work seriously, but not myself too seriously. If I've gone a few days without being able to see the humor in something or to be able to laugh at something, it is a well-being check. So think for you, some of these values could be when that's missing, it impacts my well-being and it's a signal for me to shift. And that's the role humor plays for me. Connection was a value that came on past COVID. I put this on the list to kind of say, we're not going to give you an assessment. Your values are sourced from your own experiences. So I do believe that they change. So it's worth checking in on them every few months, every few years. Post-COVID, connection was not in the top 5. It now is. It is now one of those values that help me make decisions. And family's on here because it's literally on my calendar. So think about what's on your calendar. That could be a source of your values as well. So we'll come back to my values, but I want Ashley to share what her values are and where they came from.
Thank you, Vaishali. And I really love your piece. You've shared this with our leaders, your piece about your values can change, because I think sometimes when we sit down to think about our values, especially if we're going to share them with somebody, it can feel like a lot of pressure, right? Like, oh, I got to get this right. And this defines me. And who am I, right? But it can change. So it's fine. And mine, I have noticed also have changed in some of these I identified because of our work together. And I probably wouldn't have said that 5, 10 years ago. So very quickly, mine are security. I am not a big risk taker. Anyone who knows me knows that, right? I'm the person who's always kind of looking to make sure, like, is the ground underneath my feet. But when I have a certain level of security, that's when I'm at my best, right? That's when I can get creative. That's when I can tap in. That's when I can really bring my excitement for what I'm doing at work. But I've got to kind of have some base level of security. Family as well, right? So I have 2 young daughters. I'm also very close to my extended family. My grandmother lives about 3 hours away, but I prioritize. We go and see her every single month at least, right? So these are the things where I can tap in and know that that's my priority, because I'm prioritizing those things even when it's like not, even when it's not super convenient or when it's inconvenient. The things that I will kind of drop everything for, no questions asked. It's my family. Responsibility. I kind of joke about this is sort of my eldest daughter trait coming out, right? We say all the time, like, the eldest daughter is the one who takes responsibility for everything, but that is my experience. And so as a leader, this is really important to me because I have kind of my own sense of like, what is my responsibility in any given situation. But I also think about my role as a leader as having responsibility for and to the people on my team, and I take that very seriously. Well-being for me is also something that I learned, just like Vaishali, I learned my own lessons coming out of COVID, right? And well-being was one of them. I went through a pretty serious case of burnout that it took me a while to identify. And there were some things that I learned about myself that I needed in order to be my best self. And I now kind of have this perspective of, like, I'm in this for the long haul, right? If I want to be able to do my best work and be the best leader that I can be and do this for years and years and years to come, I've got to take care of myself. So I was able to identify what are those things that I need, and I prioritize them as much as I possibly can. And then the last one for me is learning, which is one that I always knew that I loved learning, and I always knew that I enjoyed it. I didn't really understand that it was a real value until we did this work together, right? So I am at my best when I am learning or helping others learn. And in my own work, in my own role, I have found that I am the most engaged, right? Over title, compensation, authority, anything else like that. Learning for me is the biggest driver in my work. So if I have that, I'm in a great space. When I feel like I can't do that quite as much as I need to, that's when it starts to show up. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, excellent. I love you. Hopefully for those of you all listening and thinking about your values, you see where they've come from, all different kinds of experiences, whether it's opportunities that we've loved that we want on repeat, or maybe at a time of pain when we acknowledge that this was missing, whether it's connection or well-being. So that was beautiful. Excellent. And I also appreciated how you also shared what it looks like in terms of what I need at work. And so we'll explore that here more deeply. We wanted to give you all a chance here to take some time and think about your values. And I love that you all are providing your values in the chat. And we wanted to give you some space to think about your values. Even if you come up with, first of all, a rough draft, because I'm going to give you some ways to think about your rough draft. If you even think about 3, just for our time today, 3 that you have. And just one thing, although this is a full list of values, I don't have every single value on here. So we really want to make sure you make this authentic to you. If there's a value that you have that's not on the list, it's still your value. So just for slide space purposes, I couldn't fit them all, but pick something that really resonates with you and that you have examples of, like Ashley and I shared. Things that help us make decisions. When it was absent, we noticed what was at the table, back to what Samantha said earlier about this helped me make a decision. So think about those. I gave you some prompts on the left to use to get to your list of values. Is this something that I stand for? I think, if you gave your list to your friends, would they say, yes, this is absolutely it? Or would they have a different perspective? That could be another way to think about this. Do I have an example? So take a moment and isolate at least 3 values. And when you feel like you have a good list, place an X in the chat. And we'll kind of keep track of how long this is taking.
Definitely some folks who already have their list going in there. I love to see that.
Yes. Hi, KJ. I like that your 3, I feel like your 3 are still the same as when we work together, which is beautiful. Excellent. Thank you, Teddy. Love community growth movement. Movement. I don't know that we've heard that one. I love that. Yeah, as you are identifying your values, either place them in the chat or place them in the X, or place an X so we know. Yeah, thank you. Exactly. Appreciate that, Samantha. You're trying to see if yours has changed. Excellent. It's a great list coming in. Appreciate that. Responsibility, learning, achievement, family, authenticity. Thank you, Brian. Hi, Anahita. Love seeing integrity, health, excellence, justice, and presence. Oh, I know Anahita. I can confirm those are hers. Andrew Fletcher, leadership, community, teamwork, optimism, challenge. Oh, great. Excellent. These are lists that we can really use to then kind of workshop into our next phase. So give you about 20 more seconds to pick your final 3 values. I love this, Misty.
So many people have this challenge. It's hard to narrow it down.
And Ashley, how did you do that? How did you narrow it down?
I started to see some trends because there were some, like I had teamwork in mind for the longest time. And I think the first time that my team and I talked about it, I had teamwork and I was really afraid to take that off my list. I thought, well, what does that say about me? But I could see some themes and I could see them kind of combined. So like where I see responsibility, like I think about my responsibility to the team. And so I was like, okay, I can see how this kind of all relates back to one thing. And that helped me feel like I wasn't leaving out something that was really important. It shows up in so many different ways.
Love that. Love that specificity. If you all are having the same challenge, think about that. For me, it sounds like responsibility is your like umbrella value.
Yeah, I think I'm learning that. All roads kind of lead back to that.
All roads, what do all roads lead to, Misty? Is it, if you could only do one thing all day, be creative or curious, which one would it be? When you've had the most joyful experiences, I always coach people to think about like that experience that you wish was like Groundhog's Day, like that great conversation, that great project, that great day at work. What was present? Was it kindness? Were you in nature? When you think about the best, which values were there, and to help you kind of cull down that list. Yeah, so hard. Excellent. So hopefully it sounds like most folks have a good list we can work off of. So team, love for you to think about. Now let's bring this into kind of the work setting, whether you're a leader, whether you are managing a project, whether you are, in Ashley's case, like leading a team and also a member of a team. What do your values say? And Ash, I'm going to ask you for a quick to answer some of these too. So I'll like give you some time to think. But I'd love everyone to think about when you look at your list of values, what do they say about how you make decisions? How you process information? Again, if they're that lens through which I'm filtering information, what does that lens look like? What do your values say about how you build trust, how you communicate, and how you lead? And so for me, you heard a few examples about impact and some of my values and what they look like at work. Ashley, can you give us a little bit specificity too on what your values look like as it relates to these things?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, going back to this responsibility piece, when I'm thinking about making decisions and also really tying back to the security piece too, right? Like I said, I'm not a big risk taker, and that ties to the responsibility piece. I have learned that, right? So I take very seriously my role. And when I have to make decisions, like how is that going to impact somebody else? If we're going to start something, am I able to do it? Are we going to be able to finish it? Do we feel solid about what we're doing? Are we doing the right thing here? That comes into play a lot when we make decisions. When I'm processing information, I've picked up on, sitting in meetings or I'm learning things about the business. I'm always like kind of like I'm taking it in as an audience member or a team member who's getting a download of information. But I've also noticed that I'm taking it in thinking like, what can I learn from this, right? I might be taking in information from someone who's speaking to me, but then I might also be calculating kind of like, okay, how are they processing this? How are they showing up as a leader as they're communicating this to me? What can I learn from them, right? How are they showing up in this moment? Or I might be thinking like, what can I take back to my team? What's relevant for them? How can I share this with them in a way that is impactful and effective? Like what's most important for them to know?
I love that example because it also ties to other values as well in the chat. So, for example, Ashley, you shared this great example of when I'm in a meeting, I am listening to learn and I'm listening to share. I understood, like learn myself, and then I want to be able to share with my team. Versus you might bring a different lens if you have some of these other values. For example, I see like achievement. I could see if that's the ear through which, or the lens through which you are filtering information, you might be listening to what can I act on? What can I execute?
Yes,
We need all of those filters, right? The learning filter,
that's exactly right.
teamwork, execution. But when we can get clear on that filter, we can also get clear on where we're adding value and impact in work and where we might misinterpret things, where we might misunderstand because we didn't fully hear or fully take in the experience. Excellent. If you ever bring this back to your team, ask them these questions. Don't just ask them to share their values. That's great, but let's get more specific. What do values say about how you build trust? For some of you, it might be, hey, actions speak louder than words, because most of my values are centered around action. For Ashley, to me, it sounds like relationships and fulfilling commitments because of your values about responsibility are ways to build trust with you. But let me know if that's right or what else you would add.
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, in my role, trust is critical, right? We have to deal with a lot of confidential information. We are talking to leaders about, their own leadership skills or their teams, and that can be very vulnerable for people, right? And so building trust is critical on our team. And for me, that really shows up in the responsibility piece. Like if I have information that maybe not everybody is privy to, I have a responsibility to use that information, only for the way that I need it. I have a responsibility to protect it, only share it with those who need to know. And that has been, honestly, one of the biggest pieces that has allowed me opportunity in my career. I take that very seriously, and I think it comes through to the leaders that I work with, and they understand. So like I'm gonna put that information in a vault, and it's not going anywhere, and we can have a safe, confidential, candid conversation.
Excellent. And what's guiding that action is this value around responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So values are one part of the story. A lot of traditional values exercises kind of stop here, and we arm our audience with our nice, shiny new values. We're going to take them out in the world. But I teach conscious leadership, which means we see both sides, all nuances of the activity and what we're experiencing. So while I love this quote, this was introduced when we use this all the time at Whole Foods, especially it was a great coaching tool. We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. Really underscoring, again, it's probably that value system that is creating how I'm judging this situation, assessing situations, and all of those judgments and assessments lead to my reactions. And when left unchecked, when we don't know other people's values, and we don't know what their playbook is, and we don't know how to amend our reactions or to do, as this quote say, see things as they are, and then we lead to leading in seeing things as we are. So when your values are not aligned, so think about a day when those values are absent, or a project, or a piece of work, or a conversation, collaboration, when those values weren't there. And I want you to see if any of these hold true for you. When your values are not aligned, it may lead into what you may judge in others. It may be that source of something you have a very strong reaction to. And maybe if you're a leader, that's now causing me to have a reaction, maybe give feedback in not the kindest, clearest way, may even cause that physiological reaction. You talked about being interrupted. It causes that physiological reaction for me. So those could be a source of values misalignment. What I am experiencing is not aligned with what's important to me. And that could be an experience of values misalignment. And, I also teach this as part of like conflict resolution classes and conflict on teams classes, is that a clash of values is usually the source of most misunderstanding. So meaning Ashley wants the results. Well, I want to talk about the process. No one's right or wrong or good or bad. It's just, we just have two different values that we're bringing and that we're not being clear about what they are. And so now that's leading into a conflict. And so we'll explore that here. And this is where we kind of talk about that shadow side of our values. When we unlock that as leaders, we know where we need help from others. We can get ahead of frustrating situations. We can get ahead of navigating conflict because we have this deeper awareness of that lens through which we not only view things positively, but also view things negatively. So I'll walk through a few examples. If you want to share them in the chat, we'd love to see that. But had a dear friend, adventure was one of her top values. What that looked like for her, she would take on any new project. She wanted to learn all the skills and do all the things. So what she found she judged in people is her perception of laziness, right? If she didn't think that somebody was taking enough chances or having enough variety, that would look like laziness to her, right? And so that is kind of like that shadow side of the value. It brings in light, but it can also filter out things for us. And for her, that filter was that when she perceives people aren't taking enough chances, they may be lazy. For me, I value joy. So something I find myself judging is when things get way too serious, and now in no job have I had, are we curing any kind of disease? And so when I feel like the team is taking something way too seriously, I can tell I get a little annoyed. I may see something snide. Again, not proud of this, but I cannot shift what I'm not aware of. Compassion is one. I see it in the chat. You could judge a lack of empathy. So somebody not being as understanding as they could be, not digging in, could be that source of something that you judge. If you value results, you may judge having to sit and talk about the process. And I just want to get the thing done, but we have to sit and talk about how we're going to get the thing done. And then the last one, I bet all of you have some kind of version of honesty, integrity, loyalty, truth, trust. For that, the opposite likely triggers you, bothers you. Somebody being dishonest, somebody not sharing all of the information, somebody not being truthful or outwardly lying. So with that, we're going to have Ashley share what one of the shadow side of one of her values looks like as a leader.
Yeah, in my head, I call these like my blind spots, you know? So for me, like I said, learning is a value. I think it's important. I love learning for the sake of learning. It's actually one of the most fun things. It's one of the most fun things for me to do. That moment of when you get that kind of aha, I've never thought about it that way before. You get a shift in perspective. It's almost like you can feel the click in your brain. That is one of my favorite things to experience. Vaishali, when you said, like, what are those days you want to repeat over and over, right? So learning is a big value for me. That's great. That's really important in the work that I do, right? In talent management and development, we do a lot of learning. And I want other people to value learning. Part of my blind spot is that I have this expectation that everyone values learning as much as I do, right? I operate in a high growth, extremely fast paced business. We are founder led. We have a deep entrepreneurial spirit that is all about taking action, moving quickly, making things happen. It has been a secret to our success. It is fantastic. It is the reason we are able to grow. But as you can imagine, there can be a lot of friction there, right? When I'm someone who wants to spend a lot of time, either if it's something that I'm going to do or something that I'm asking others to do, for instance, in our leadership development program, I understand that learning doesn't happen quickly. It takes time, right? But a lot of times our environment says we don't have time for this. And that's very real. For me, it can feel like a trigger of we don't value learning. This is not important. This is not a priority even when that's not actually the case. But that's how it can feel and come across to me. And that can cause, some tension and frustration and a little bit of conflict between teams if we're not communicating clearly, like you said.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for talking about the root of the impact of that shadow. When left unchecked, it can quickly lead to a conclusion that you're coming to, which then may lead to a reaction that you're having.
Right.
If I perceive that people are being dismissive of learning, I might treat them one way. And values help us understand that source of that fast judgment. And it gives us an
Yeah.
invitation. This work hopefully gives us an invitation to pause and get curious.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So team, I'd love for you all to think about some of your values. Given your values, what might be things that you judge? What might be behaviors that you may have that disproportionate reaction to? As you were thinking about them, for me, one of my values was impact. So when I shared that story about being interrupted, that is likely a case because impact is so important to me and I wasn't able to finish my sentence. I wasn't able to make that impact. So it literally led me to shut down. I'm not proud of that, but I know I'm in a room of friends. I know this will be recorded for
Safe,
eternity.
safe space, right? We're learning.
So think through because you value, Misty, because you value impact, what is something that may bother you? Because you value creativity, what may be something that bothers you? And that could be in those of you with justice, right? I saw that with Anahita as well. Like, what is it that you notice yourself having a very strong reaction to? I'll give you about 30 seconds to think about a few. And I promise we're going to end with an antidote. I'm not going to just leave you with these shadow values and go have a great day because it doesn't feel great to think about it, but this is where that work happens. This is where consciousness is built and where we can use this as a tool of empathy. Lack of self education, lack of taking ownership, and forming opinions on one source of or instance. Thank you, Susan. Love that specificity. Misty, aversion to risk, change, needing to do the same things the same way. Excellent. Yes, 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 yes.
So Misty and I would need to talk it out, right? Because I'm not the risk taker and she's ready to move fast and take some risks, right?
Yeah. For sure, right? So that's a great example. In a fast-paced company like yours, taking risks is probably something that people are encouraged to do regularly. Or
Yeah, it's how you have to grow, right? It's how you have to operate in business. So you have to find that balance that we're going to talk about.
yeah, how you have to grow. I love that. Oh, I love that, Eugene. My value for entrepreneurship makes me judge. It's not bad. It's just your shadow of process over deliberation. Yes, I can imagine an entrepreneur we want to, like, makes me judge process over deliberation. Judge process. Okay. Because I value accountability, when people make excuses for not doing what they say, I may judge them as unreliable. Thank you. That is beautiful. Thank you all for that openness. And with that, we want to give you a process over deliberation. Okay, thank you. Oh, thank you for that. That, for some reason, the way that was written wasn't landing with me, but I appreciate that clarification, Eugene. Okay, we want to give you a way to think about how do we now find the balance? Because we know our values, back a reminder, come from our personal experiences. They come from, for me, a lot of years of wiring. And so they come from this very, I would almost say, sacred place for a lot of us. And so they do lend to why we move so quickly, why we make judgments so quickly. But when left unchecked, they can also lead to kind of an overreaction or disproportionate assessment of something that then leads to a reaction. So I will give you a tool about how do we use our values as a tool for empathy. So back to that example of my friend for whom adventure is a value. We mentioned laziness is something she judges, and kind of laziness in her perspective might mean not taking enough chances in your career, kind of doing the same thing, playing things safe. When we used to travel together for work. She'd throw her bags in the hotel room and go explore. I'm like, no, I need to relax. So team, and let's see if anybody wants to say this in the chat. Why would somebody need to be quote unquote lazy? What is that serving them? If they're not taking a lot of chances in their career, if they need things to be steady. Yes. Thank you, Deanna. You need to recharge. At the bottom, I just put stillness, rest, calm, right? That could be security, safety, recovery. Absolutely. For me, when we were traveling, I just needed to rest. But it could be just that recovery, safety, life outside is complicated enough. Yes. Kate, I appreciate that, right? There's my
Great perspective.
yeah. Yeah. Did you want to expand on that, Ashley?
I just think thinking about like we never know everything that somebody's dealing with, right? Or you bring yourself to work and you have a whole life outside of that. So I love the empathy that Kate is bringing to that perspective.
Yes. Yes. And because this is a value for her, it's even going to be more highly charged, meaning adventure is really important to her. Laziness, there's probably a way you respond to somebody who you perceive as lazy. It's probably not very good. But if you thought somebody was just taking a break or needing to be safe or needing to recover, that is a different conversation. You probably treat them with more empathy, give them more understanding. So this is not to say good or bad or right or wrong. This is just a tool in the moment when you kind of feel that disproportionate reaction coming up. Can I pause and just ask myself, why would an individual just need to be behaving this way? Because this is misaligned with my values, it honestly, I need to stop and pause because I just need to widen my filter a bit for me to have a more trust-based conversation versus what she would talk about when she taught this about responding to laziness, which wasn't always a response she was proud of. Ashley, you had learning. Then on the other side of you, we have the know-it-all. But why would somebody need to act that way? Or what could be the balance of that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's having that level of expertise. Sometimes they need to show a sense of confidence in what they're doing, right? Sometimes, going back to your piece about, I think somebody said in the chat, security, safety, there's a little bit of that coming in there, right? Sometimes we have to come in with that confidence and feel like I know what I'm doing. We see this with leaders, right? Where sometimes leaders are afraid to ask questions, right? Or they feel like maybe they don't need um, certain programs or certain, sessions because they're like, oh, I've been doing this a long time. I've got this, right? And that's important. But then there's this other piece that we talked about around, feeling like it's not a priority or not having time to learn that is also a shadow, right?
Yes, and I had for here learning as we go too. I'd love for you to expand on that too, especially as it relates to maybe having to know it all versus can we learn in a more agile approach?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I can take a step back, when I can realize that I'm having that reaction of maybe somebody feeling like it's not a priority or they don't have time to learn or it's not something that we can do right now, when I'm able to take a step back and find out what's really going on, it's actually that we need to change how we're learning, right? People want to learn. That's almost never the case that they don't want to learn. But we have to find a way that they can learn in the flow of what they're already doing. Or in our case, like I said, in a very high growth, fast paced environment, a lot of times we are learning as we go. And so, this has been an experience that I have had and that a lot of our teams have had. If people feel the way that I do, it's actually, this has made me a better leader. It's made us a better team when we think about how we deliver results to our customers. And it's, when we see that we don't have to have all the answers all at once. We can start small, we can build, we can refine as we go. When you have this learning value like I do, sometimes you can think, I need to know everything there is to know before I can move on this thing, right? But that's usually not reality for most of us.
I love that. I love that because especially, I teach at a women's development institute, at UT with our students, the undergrads, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of what they say to me. I have to know everything, or I have to fill 90% of the internship job description before I'll do it. And it's this
Mm-hmm.
invitation to stop and say, well, hold on, or can you learn as you go? Can you be confident in what you do know and get curious about the opportunities that you don't know and just be open about that? I was also kind of relating that I see the topic around imposter syndrome too in the chat as well. And
Yes, yes, I think that shows up a lot.
yes. So, a few things that I'll say about this is that it's a tool for empathy and curiosity. So, as a leader, as a teammate, again, when we are having this conflict that we just can't break through or frustration with a stakeholder, can we stop and say, what are my values telling me about what I am missing? What is that sacred pause between what I'm experiencing and my reaction? And in that pause, can I use this as a tool to get curious? This does not mean that we'll always have the right answer. So for example, if I go back to adventure laziness and what the person needs is rest, I may not be right, but the process is more important than the answer. The fact that as a leader, this tool helps you just stop in the moment and entertain other possibilities to help you have other reactions is the goal of this triangle work. Okay.
Hey,
Um,
Shelly, I'm curious, do you see Susan's comment? She says, I'm struggling a little bit. I think this, I relate to this. We see this a lot in our environment. I value initiative, self-starter. How do I balance the lack of taking ownership? I think that's a very honest question.
Yes. So Ashley, what do you think we would do in this with the values triangle?
Well, I'm curious. I'm curious, Susan, if you have any thoughts or if anyone has thoughts about what could be causing that lack of taking ownership, right? What you are seeing on the surface as a lack of taking ownership, what could actually be kind of underneath that or behind that? I think there are a lot of possible answers there.
Yes. Yes. Susan, I love that. Someone is stressed or has not been empowered. So um, they need help, unclear expectations. So, Susan, this is just an area for you just to get curious. You may not know the answer, but the fact that you're stopping and asking is where this work happens. So we can either respond to the lack of taking ownership, which as leaders, sometimes we need to, and we can also get curious, is let's get to the root cause of why. Is it expectations haven't been set clear? Is it that maybe they came from a a workplace where they weren't allowed to ask for clarification. Maybe there's a little bit of fear there. How can you be that leader that helps them feel safe? That they can ask for help. They can say, this is why I'm not executing. Because look at all these different hypotheses. I love Kate. They may need help, but they can't ask for it. Unclear expectations. I would also just get curious about their level of fear. And again, the fact that this triangle should just help you pause, zoom out, and just help you get curious. It's not going to tell you that the person is definitely acting in a certain way. It's definitely just saying, why would a person be acting like this? And how can I zoom out my lens to take in more information?
Yeah, I love what you say about it. It doesn't replace the conversation, right? But it enables you to have a better one.
Yes, yes. Excellent. So with that, we'll just have one quick PSA. I'll let you all think about that. I want you to come away with kind of that balanced value. We're going to open it up here for questions here in a second. What I am going to say too is a lot of you probably had that honesty, trust, integrity, and then the shadow is dishonesty, lying, sabotaging, right? I would love for you to think about in that moment, this work does not justify bad behavior. It does not justify, well, this is my value. And so this is why I'm reacting negatively. But it helps you get curious about, why does somebody feel like they have to act that way? What is that source of their fear? What are they trying to protect? And get curious about that root in addition to holding them accountable for that harmful behavior. And so this is the work I really hope we can see leaders doing both. Accountability, but also balancing that with empathy. Okay. So I know we love applicability, so I'll have Ashley talk about this. And as she's doing that, we'd love to take any of your questions in these last few minutes. So go ahead and start placing them in the chat while she goes over some applicability ideas.
Yeah, I think, well, the thing we talked about initially, right? Like we can all relate to this. I love the applicability of this because it's not something that you have to over prepare for. You don't need a ton of materials. You don't need a special setting, right? It can be as simple as saying, hey, team, like I'd love to talk about our personal values in our next team meeting, our next one on one. I think depending on the dynamic of your team, this can be a really great group conversation. But sometimes the dynamics are different and maybe the safety or trust might not be there for everyone involved. So you know your teams and your people best. So I would recommend just thinking about that. Sometimes maybe it helps to start with one-on-one conversations. Sometimes it can be a peer group. I think we talk a lot about leaders bringing it to their direct report teams, right? But also this can be much more broad. You can talk about it. I think this is a great conversation for managing up with your own leader and getting some more clarity there. And then doing it with peer groups, maybe cross-functional partners, stakeholders that you work really closely with. And there's tons of lists out there on values, but I think sometimes just asking people like, hey, I'd love to learn more about you and what's most important to you. Making sure that everyone understands it's a safe space and have everybody kind of come and do. You don't even have to go into the shadow side and all of that. I think sometimes that can be kind of a level 2 conversation, right? But just saying like, tell me about your values. What does that mean? What does that look like for you? And I think a great question for leaders can be like, what can I do to ensure that you can live out that value here? Or how can I help, show support and respect for that value?
Yes. And a great question too is when you're experiencing that's not aligned with your values, how can I support you? So
yes.
I'll give a quick example of what this could look like. I had a direct report whose all of her values were on people, relationships, collaboration, connection. And she had to be on a project where she's going to be by herself for a few weeks. And so armed with her values, I could get ahead and say, hey, I know you're about to go be on your own for a while. I also know connecting with the team is really important. What can I do while you have to be on this project and be a bit isolated? And so we just did she's like, can we just have a quick team huddle just so I can see faces? And, we just did these small lifts. I'm not saying saying every time it's going to be a small lift, but I think there was just gratitude in the awareness and the conversation. I could just have a better conversation and equip her better because I know she was about to go into something that was going to kind of drain her energy. When we are consistently working and our work isn't necessarily aligned with what we love to do or our values that may bring us energy, it can drain our energy. And so as leaders, can we help our teams use this knowledge to get ahead of those pieces of work that may drain their energy to help people preserve that or understand? For me, if I'm going to be in a meeting where I feel like there's no impact made, it's going to be draining for me afterwards. So I know to not plan a high stakes conversation or another high stakes meeting after that, because I'm not going to be my best self and I'm not going to bring my best energy to that. So these are all ways that you can use awareness values to coach and support your team, in addition to always be getting curious about the lens through which you're giving feedback and assessing performance.
And that's so empowering, but then also think about the engagement, Vaishali, right? Of just that team member saying, Vaishali sees me, she gets me, and how valuable that is from an engagement standpoint as well.
Yes.
Really incredible.
I love that because it gives me a playbook. It helps me get a playbook, and so I'm not guessing what she needs. I can do it. I can give my coaching grounded in better information. Okay, yes, I see this kind of theme about navigating tension between staying true to their values and adapting to organizational change. I'd love for you to think about your response to this, Ashley, as I just share a few ways to think about this. I'll talk about my own experiences in working in different companies with a very, very strong set of values. I think the gift that this work has given me is that I am very self-aware about what I need, where I'm going to fall short, and what drains my energy. So if I know organizational change is happening, I know maybe some of it I can't control. I know it's happening, but at least an acknowledgement and appreciation for my values really helps me steward that change in a way that's more aligned with my energy. So if I know, like, for example, change, experimentation, I may not know the impact of what's going to happen. That's a little misaligned with my value. So I am just going to preserve my energy in this moment. I'm going to do what I could take to get that oxygen in, to be more open, be more curious. If anything, knowing where something is going to get misaligned and getting ahead of it is really the power of this work. You can do that and say, I still cannot get ahead of what's going on. Maybe there's a really deep, deep misalignment. Then I offer you to think about, if that's the right environment for you, right? Think about what your threshold is. For me, 80% I need aligned. If consistent, and do I get every 80% every single day? No. If on average I'm getting 50 to 60, then I know it's probably time for me to maybe move on to another organization. But I think the power of this work is using it to get curious and really think critically about your energy. Misty, what's the most common? I don't know. I can't say. Just kidding. I would say I do this work a lot with especially small C-level teams. This execution. And I get it. I get there are a lot of values around execution. That is what the company has put you in a leadership position to do. So I'd offer you to be curious about the values that are not present on your leadership team. Those are probably the values that you need the most, is how in my 1 minute here is how I would quickly answer that. Can you have work values? Oh, I know we talked about this, work values and personal values. I say make this authentic to you. To you, Ashley, do you think yours are for both work and personal?
I think there's a lot of overlap. I can see where she's coming from, and I kind of went through that filter myself when thinking about my values. So I see that, and I think if I really challenged myself, there would be some differences. But I'm curious, and it should work for you, but I'm curious and I'm thinking there may be a common thread between them, right? Because we are who we are. So it would be really curious to kind of dig in and have that conversation.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I say make the list authentic to you. If you need separate, if there's some whatever it is that helps you understand the sources of your energy, then it's playing the role that it needs to play. Excellent. We are at time. I know there was maybe a request for materials. I kind of saw it fly by. If you do have a request, I do have a handout. You can just reach out to me. I guess via LinkedIn would be easy. And then there's Ashley's LinkedIn as well. We're happy to stay in touch, and we would love to know what you did as a result of this work.
Thank you both. We're so happy to have you on. And just for our audience, we will be sending a recap with the recording and any resources mentioned. So you will get that tomorrow. Thanks all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.